Okay, hello everyone. This is episode 5 of Ultra Melodic Podcast, and today we will be doing our third artist of the week, and it is on Ariana Grande. Just in time for her new marriage, which we are very happy about. So, congratulations to Ariana on that. Anyways, just right before we get started with diving into her albums, we're just going to say a little bit of our background, how we got into her, how we discovered her, and all that. So, how about you, Venetia?
So I've listened to her music from the beginning. I first heard her on The Way, actually probably her very first song, Put Your Hearts Up. So I've I've known about her and her music ever since she started. But I really got more interested in her starting with My Everything and then more so with Dangerous Woman. And I've been a pretty big fan since Dangerous Woman. So she's one of my favorite top 5 artists of all time. And I love listening to her music a lot. And I am very happy that she got married recently and they seem to have a very lovely relationship. So I wish the best for her.
Um, yeah, I first discovered her with The Way. That was the first song that was kind of big. It was a hit for her that came out, but I didn't really know too much about her. She was kind of just there for me until the My Everything era. So Problem came out of nowhere. It was like really huge. It just came out like with big sales in its first week and stuff. And then she had a lot of hits in that era. So she definitely kind of became somewhat of a household name. And then ever since Dangerous Woman, I've been listening to her music in high school. I listened to like a lot of her albums. She was one of the main artists I listened to, but I still wouldn't say that I'm an Arianator just yet for reasons that maybe I'll say later on. But I feel like I'm still waiting on like one album that's like amazing for me or like in my favorites of all time. But that's the only reason why. But we'll dive into that very soon. So starting with her debut album, Yours Truly, released in 2013. Venetia, what are your thoughts on it?
So this one went number one. And I'd like to point out that Ariana Grande was not an unknown name when she entered the music industry. She was actually fairly well known because of her roles in Victorious and in Sam and Cat. So I feel like a lot of people sometimes do forget that she didn't just enter the industry unknowingly. We kind of already knew who she was, but I don't want to. That isn't taking away from her talent, though. That is just something that needs to be mentioned. But overall, I think this was a very good start for her. I think it showcased just what she was going to be doing and what she was going to be bringing to the industry, which is basically a pop star, but with a little bit of an R&B sound thrown into the mix, and not to mention her impressive vocals. So she is known for her vocals, and she has shown that from day one that this is what she will be marketing. This is who she is. She is the vocalist of probably quote unquote the newer artists. This album showcased a lot of her higher register. A lot of her earlier music tended to do that, which is great because a lot of artists can't reach as high levels as her. So it's definitely a unique aspect of her and her sound. Some notable tracks in this album: Honeymoon Avenue, Baby I, The Way, Tattooed Heart, just a few that I thought were pretty impressive. Some negatives though, the album ends terribly. You've got all these wonderful tracks, good tracks, good tracks, good tracks, and then it just drops off entirely with the last two songs. Popular Song, I think, is her worst song ever. I don't know what she was thinking with that one. And Better Left Unsaid is just kind of a weird sound. It's a weird sound. It just didn't. I feel like it did a terrible job of closing the album. So, like, when I'm listening to this album, I think, how do you go from a beautiful ballad like Almost Is Never Enough? I mean, that's a beautiful song. That should have been a notable track. Almost Is Never Enough. Beautiful ballad. And then you go to the next song is Popular Song, and then the next song is Better Left Unsaid. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And another thing is, I think it's her most childish album. Something younger kids would like. I don't really blame her for that, for starting at that point, just given the fact that at the time, younger kids were her main audience. Her fans were the ones watching her on TV. But I'm glad that she has matured with her sound, with her topics, and everything as she's progressed throughout her career, though. I think this was a good start, but she has done much better since.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the things you said. I feel like yours truly is a little bit more mature than like a typical Nickelodeon star, but it's not to the level of like a mature pop star, you know. So you can tell that she was a Nickelodeon not even that long ago in this album, honestly, just by the voice alone. And you know, in retrospect, looking at this album, her vocals have improved majorly since here. You know, it was good on this album, but it wasn't technically as good. She didn't use her lower register as much. It's just so much higher, not necessarily in a good way, but I feel like this album does have a lot of positive aspects to it. I feel like for a debut album, this isn't super necessarily messy. I do think it does at least try to keep the sounds a little bit together and have a cohesive feel to it, which is good. But I do think there are just a lot of songs that aren't sonically good at all. You know, like you were saying, popular songs just awful, and you know, there's a lot of songs on here, especially in the second half, like you were saying. I think this album starts out really strong. So Honeymoon Avenue is a great opener. Baby I is a good song right there. Tattooed Heart's really good. But then after that, other than maybe The Way, like I feel like The Way is nostalgic for me, so maybe that's why I love it so much. But a lot of the songs on the second half of here aren't really that good. And how do I say this? There's not really much to write home about. There's nothing that makes this album stand out. We know a little bit about who she is, more so than a lot of artists like debuting now with their debut album. I don't know anything about them, but still, there's something stylistically that's lacking here that makes you go, wow. So it's not that bad, but I think, I mean, I know she's done better, obviously. So it's just a classic case, kind of like Taylor Swift's original album of just a young album. So that's what I think about yours truly.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The second half of the album just kind of really dropped off after the really strong first half. I think Honeymoon Avenue, in my opinion, is her best opening song. But
So then now moving on to 2014's album My Everything. This is her commercial breakout. You know, it had a lot of big hits. So what do you think about it?
so this one also went number one, and as you said, it is her breakout album. This is the album that kind of made her a household name, even more so, and especially in the music industry. I think the singles here are some of the best choices that she's made for singles. I don't think Ariana Grande has made very many poor single choices, but I think this is one of the best sets of singles, especially when it comes to describing the album and sales, especially sales. These are not close to her best songs, though, so I'm not making the claim that they are anywhere near her best songs. But I will later I will later explain a little bit more about why I think the singles are some of the best choices. But I will say this: um, it is one of her most fun and iconic, and not iconic, nostalgic listens. It's a very nostalgic listen. You know, when I listen to this album, I think back to that time of when I was younger, and I was a sophomore in high school when this came out. So, you know, it was a different time period, and I guess it was an iconic era. I mean, I remember everyone being so obsessed with how she fit on the stool on that cover, and I remember it being a trend. Like, everyone was like, "How did there's no way she fit on that stool," and people would attempt to, like, copy her, and
Really?
I thought I'm sorry?
Really? I didn't know that.
It was a thing. It was a thing. People are like, "How can she fit on that stool?"
Mhm.
It's just so funny. So yeah, it was an iconic era, I think. Um, looking back at it, some notable tracks on this album: "One Last Time," "Best Mistake," "Only One," and "You Don't Know Me" are both deluxe tracks. "Love Me Harder," "Problem," and "Break Free." Um, but of course, there's some negatives. So this album lacks cohesion. of all of her albums, I think it's the least cohesive. There's nothing holding it together. It's just a series of songs, which is why I think the singles were great choices because each one describes a certain aspect of the chaos on this album, you know? Um, Bang Bang was a single, but it gets worse with every listen. I actually liked it when it came out. And now 7 years later, I'm like, "You know what? I'm not sure why I liked it in the first place." It just gets worse and worse and worse as I listen to it. And somehow the deluxe tracks are better than most of the album, like 85% of the album, which I think is very disappointing that that she that it took deluxe tracks to be able to bring up the album. I think without those, it'd easily be her worst album. But because those are there, I'm, like, more inclined to say because those 2 Only One and You Don't Know Me are just so good that I'm like, it brings up the whole album, but they're deluxe tracks, so
Yeah, my everything. I call this album my featurings because there's 8 people featured, or 8 songs where people are featured on here out of 15. That's more than half of the album, and that's just crazy to me. Like, sure, we go into albums expecting like 2 to 3 features, like that's good, but 8 features, especially for your second album, I feel like this album, the main problem here is it feels like a playlist of songs rather than a collective body of work. Even yours truly did a better job at having a body of work than this album. I feel like her record label at the time was realizing that she became somewhat big with yours truly, that they realized her potential for My Everything to get even bigger. So I feel like they made just a big mix of songs here, put a lot of popular artists, and then hope that something would stick and then go forth with that route. So I feel like there's a lot of experimentation on here just for commercial purposes, which doesn't always make for the best quality of an album. With that being said, I do think there are some good highs on here. I think One Last Time is still one of her best songs. I think Only One's great. What else is there? Love Me Harder, Break Free. So like those were singles. But the album tracks don't really have much to offer, and the features we didn't really like. Some of them are decent, but some of them just sound like the label forcing her to do this. So I feel like My Everything, while there are some really good songs, I feel like the highs on this album might be higher than yours truly's. I don't think that this comes together as a good body of work. So it's my opinion.
no, I completely agree, and as you said, it does sound like a playlist of songs. I don't really know what's holding everything together. What's Is there an overarching story? Is there a theme to this? What is happening on this album? It just seems like it's a collection of songs that they threw together and they're like, "Here's an album."
I agree with that. So moving on to 2016's Dangerous Woman, what do you think of this one?
If you guys watched our 10 favorite albums one video, you'll know that this is my third favorite album of all time. It did not go number 1. This is the only Ariana Grande album that did not debut at number 1.
Blocked by
Debuted
the
at number
Blocked
2.
by your fave.
I know. I just because it's Drake, I was okay with it. I was like, it's fine.
There's always a curse of like Drake blocking Ariana songs. Like he blocked No Tears Left to Cry from number one and like a ton of other stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah, and, I think there was a video, Astroworld came out around the same time as Sweetener,
Sweetener. Yeah.
right? And so there was a video of Ariana Grande's, manager being like, "I think it's gonna debut at 1." She's like, "You don't know what Travis is gonna pull." And I thought that was so funny. She thought Travis might block her this time.
Travis Travis blocked Nicki the week before, so
Yeah, exactly. So she's like, "You don't know what Travis is gonna pull." But that okay, we digress, but I thought that was funny. So yeah, this is the only album of hers that didn't go number 1, which is sad, but whatever. I call this her shaping album because this is the album where I think she started to become her own person and her own sound here. Um, which is one of the positives I think of this album. She ditched the more childlike Nickelodeon appropriate pop, and she said she's going to be that dangerous woman. She's going to embody that persona of a dangerous woman. And I love that. I love that she grew into herself. Like this is Ariana Grande. This is who she is. This is what you're going to get from now on. I think this was her best era. I think there is something about the bunny ear era that cannot be topped. I don't know what it is. I loved it. The whole thing, everything about it was just incredible. Um, she changed the game with the side to side collab. I thought that was wonderful, and now her and Nicki collabs always do well. I love hearing the 2 of them on a song, and it started with side I will no, it didn't start with Side to Side. I
Bang,
take that back.
bang.
Yeah, it started with Bang Bang, but Side to Side is what really pushed that forward. Um, Into You is pop perfection. I have said that once, I've said that 10 times. Into You is pop perfection. Dangerous Woman changed her image. I mean, there's so much change involved in such a good way on this album. She did so much here. I mean, there's a reason why some of the songs I just listed are so popular. There's a reason why they did so well in the general public and commercially. And I think this is her most accessible album. If I told someone who isn't really familiar with Ariana Grande's music, I would tell them to listen to this album first because I think it's got a little bit for everyone. You want a beat, you got Greedy, you got Into You, you got Touch It. You want something with a little bit of rap involved, side to side, every day, Let Me Love You. You want a softer and a slower sound, maybe Moonlight, I Don't Care, Leave Me Lonely. You want to listen to something that can be found in a medium range clothing store, Be All Right, Bad Decisions. Like you have a song for every sound. And I think that's another reason why this album is just so good. But of course, it's not a flawless album, and I wouldn't say that the writing here is the best. Um, and I don't think I'd find difficulty. I don't think I'd have difficulty finding a song to take off of it. Like my heart would hurt taking off a song, like having to pick a song because I love the album so much. But I think it'd be very easy for me to decide which song is weaker than the rest. And similar to My Everything, I think it's not as cohesive as some of her other works. I think it has an overarching theme of being herself, shedding that Nickelodeon actress skin, but I think that's it. So I mean, it does have that, a little bit more than My Everything, but it's still not as cohesive as the works that have come later on.
Yeah, Dangerous Woman. This is her first good album. That's just my opinion. Yours truly and My Everything, they were okay, but they were a bit patchy. This, you can definitely just hear the difference. And as you look back on her discography, you notice that this was a turning point for her. I feel like I do agree with this album definitely shedding, completely leaving behind that Nickelodeon, Starlight. And I feel like I do remember that she was supposed to call this album Moonlight, and then she changed it to Dangerous Woman. I really like that decision because I think Dangerous Woman, as the album title, exemplifies her new persona, what this is going to be like. And I really do think this album contains a lot of my favorite Ariana Grande songs. Like if I had to make a list of like my top 10, I feel like this album would have a lot in it. So Moonlight, this is probably my favorite opener by her. I think her vocals on that song are just so good. What else is there? Into You, probably maybe my favorite Ariana Grande song, Pop Perfection. Like you said, I'm not going to argue with anyone on that. It's been a bop since day one.
Yes.
It goes off. Also, there's Greedy, which is good. The key change is that song's so fun, but the key change is the best part for sure. Sometimes, which I think is very, very underrated. I think the lyrics, I don't know if she wrote the song, but whoever wrote it, the lyrics are very good on here. Bad Decisions is a fun song. What else is there? New Better Forever Boy. This one doesn't ever get talked about, but I'm going to talk about it because I really like it. I think the production choices on this one are really cool, and I love when artists kind of like merge two songs. This kind of gives me like Justin Timberlake feels with his albums, but I really love the production on this one. So, and then, she released the like new edition recently with like Step On Up and Jason Song, so
Mhm.
Step On Up's good. Although I do prefer the blackout version would give me more, because I think every single song with that instrumental is badass, but I digress. So this album definitely has a lot of highlights for me, and that's something I can't say about her first two albums. And I really do think that even though this album isn't as cohesive as you were saying, because it really isn't too cohesive, like it has a lot of styles, I think there's a sound that ties it together that I can't describe. So like if I heard a song that like Ariana did like after this, I feel like I could pinpoint it as like this song belongs on Dangerous Woman, which I think is a good thing. Like it shows that somewhere in there, like it has an identity for itself. I don't think this album is perfect though. I think one of the main issues with this is it's not really that inspired. Like, I don't think we're going to talk about Sweetener and Thank You Next later on, but this album does not measure up to being as inspired in that department, both lyrically and, just the overall feeling of it. And I think that's something Ariana does best. And also, I just feel like, the styles are kind of all over the place a little bit. So even if it has that overarching feel to it, I don't know, it's hard to say because some albums do get away with it and some don't, and I feel like this gets away with it for a lot of the songs, but some of the songs aren't as good. Like, I wouldn't say that a good chunk of these songs are like standouts in her discography. Like, maybe they're not super below average, but I think they maybe are just average, like if you put all her songs in a ranking. So that's my thoughts on Dangerous Woman. I think this is a good album. I was proud of her for making this. And yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think very many are super standouts because I think those come from her later albums, which we will be discussing. But um, yeah, they're not bad. They're very middle of the pack. But I just really like it. I don't know. There's probably nostalgia involved in that too.
Yep. So now we have 2018 Sweetener, her Grammy-winning era and album. So what do you think of that one? Pharrell Williams produced.
Yes, yes. This one went number one, and I think it's her quote unquote experimental album. And I think it's a very emotional piece coming after Manchester. We actually just passed the 4-year anniversary of it, and she did, of course, um, talk about it and honor the victims and all of that, which it's a big deal. But as you said, Pharrell produced it, and you can tell the production here is a huge step up. I mean, shout out to Pharrell. He did his thing. He put a lot of effort behind it, and you can tell it was incredible. Each song has its own identity. Each song is differentiated from each other, and that only comes from an incredible producer like Pharrell. So truly incredible in that sense. And I think this is her best set of singles by
Oh,
far. Like
by
far
far.
by far.
Oh, for sure.
Exactly. No Tears Left to Cry, Breathe In, God Is a Woman. How do you beat that?
Mm,
How do you beat that trio?
yeah.
I mean, No Tears Left to Cry, so much meaning behind it. It was the first release after Manchester. It was her way of moving forward from such a traumatic event happening. God Is a Woman is her best song. I will make that claim right now. I will not argue with it. Like, argue with a wall. God Is a Woman is her best song. From the lyrics to the vocals to the production to the meaning to the music video. Everything about that song is a masterpiece, and I will not hear anyone say otherwise. I
Mm.
very deeply believe that. Um, yeah, the singles are incredible. Every song on here is incredible in its own way. I just think the singles are just truly above and beyond. Um, I loved the album cover, actually. I really liked it. It was the first one in color, which I think was a huge contrast from what she had done before. It was very cute. I liked it. It was cute. And I think it's safe to say that a lot of her best songs come off here. If I have to think of like best Ariana Grande songs, I could name quite a few that come off here. So some notable tracks for me are like No Tears Left to Cry, Breathin', God Is a Woman, Good Night and Go, Every Time, REM, even Borderline is actually pretty good, and I feel like we need to talk about it more because it gets way too much hate, and I love Missy Elliott's part in it. Um, yeah, I love Borderline. I don't know why people don't like it. It's got a funky beat. Um, but I think this is her least accessible album. Um, I know when it first came out, people didn't really like it. It was not very well received by the public, and it took time for a lot of people for it to grow on them. And now it's very much loved, enjoyed, respected, all of that. But when it came out, not so much, and I think it is a little different than what we're used to from Ariana Grande, which is probably why it took people more time, but I wouldn't this isn't the album I would suggest people listen to first. This is something I would have people listen to other albums, and then based on what they like, then I'd suggest Sweetener. Even though I think it's an incredible album by her, I just don't know if it's something that people would enjoy her on or heard this work. I'm not sure if it's just the most enjoyable. So,
Mhm. Yeah, Sweetener. I think this is a great album. There's just way too many career highlights on here. Like you're saying, the singles, No Tears Left to Cry, God is Woman, Breathing, all so good. Easily her best single pack. I feel like this album has just so much of what we've been wanting for Ariana Grande so long, but she didn't do it with her first three albums. So I really like that she took some time. This was her longest break. I think it was over 2 years, like 2 years and 4 months, I believe. And a
mhm,
lot of life changes happened within that time. So she came back and did this album, make shedding light, on a situation that was rough for her, on a time that was not the best for her. And I really think she did that well. So getting Pharrell on this thing was really good. Some of my highlights include REM. I think this is a really good song. I like Pharrell's production on here. I just think it's so calming. And yeah, God is a Woman, obviously, Every Time. I think we need to talk about this song. It's for sure one of the more mainstream ones on the album, but it's really catchy. And yeah, it's just catchy. And I think the melodies are very, very rich on here, and the beat's very good. Breathin', ever since the first listens, has like been one of my favorites. I remember when this album came out, a lot of people did not like it. They're like, "Oh my god, this album's like different. I don't know about it." But Breathin' and then Every Time, but more so Breathin', those were the only songs that people liked. They're like, Breathin' saved the album. So I feel like that's the one song that people have always been in agreement on, probably because it exemplifies more of that pop sound that's a bit accessible, but it does it in such a good way. It's a really good subject matter, and I really love the bridge with that guitar in the background. Like,
mhm,
oh, that was such a good touch. So yeah, No Tears Left to Cry is great. Better Off, a really good one and emotional. I think that's like a ballad done right. And then Good Night and Go. I think this one has like it's a cover like a little bit. I think it's like halfway cover, but not really. But it's
mm,
yeah, no, it like I think it samples like a song that it's like lyrics from a song, but it's not
mhm,
complete. Like they redid the production.
okay,
So maybe someone can fact check me on that. But this is a really good song too. So I think that this album is very, very good and necessary. It deserved the Grammy, especially over the candidates that year, in my opinion. But I do think that, oh my God, how do I say this? There's some sinkers. I'm just going to be real here with everyone. There's some songs that are bottom tiered. Um, if I'm going to have to spotlight them, The Light is Coming. I think this song's awful. I'm sorry. I know all the Arianators are like, it's so good, like how can you hate? You're just basic because you hate the song. It's like not really. Like I've listened to a lot of music that incorporates samples like this one, and has a similar style. But the sample on this thing, samples can make or break a song, but it totally broke the song. Like the guy screaming in the background is so annoying, and the production was just really really weird. There's some I don't know what Pharrell was doing on that song. He definitely hit he it definitely REM. He that was a good production by Pharrell, but Light is Coming was not, in my opinion. Blazed, I don't know. I feel like Blazed grew on me a little bit, but I still think it's kind of one of her worst songs. I feel like I know what Pharrell was trying to do with this one, but something was still off. I get the vibe of it, but her vocals even on this song are kind of weird. The mixing, something was up with the mixing and mastering on Blaze because a lot of the harmonies were not anywhere near even Dangerous Woman's harmonies. And the way it transitions from raindrops is like very, very awkward. Like at least put a different opener, like she has this beautiful opener and then uh the beginning part of Blaze plays. It's just like really weird to me. And then Borderline, I know you're saying you like Borderline. I don't because I think Missy Elliott on here, I was looking forward to hearing her verse is like 10 seconds long, which is really weird. I'm like, okay, what'd she add to the song? And, Pharrell, I know his production and stuff. He worked, back in the mid 2000s with Gwen Stefani a lot. I feel like this just sounds like a Gwen Stefani B side from 2005. Like it's really like you can go to Love Angel Music Baby by Gwen Stefani and find a song that's better than this, in my opinion. So that was a little bit, I don't know. It's okay, but I feel like other than that, this album is great. If they cut those three songs, Sweetener would be her best album by far. Like literally, it would not be a debate. It already has an argument for maybe being her best now, but if they cut those sinkers, then this would be her best album. So Sweetener, overall, a really good album, just with a few missteps, in my opinion, that kind of take it off a little bit from being like a perfect album. But yeah,
No, I think you make very valid points. I think I just really like Borderline because, like, when she's like, "Once you taste my ice cream, I want you
yeah,
to" oh my gosh, there is something about that one line that I like serotonin, like, it's so good. It makes me so happy. But I think you make very valid points. The other songs you mentioned are I love Nicki and Ariana, but I just think that wasn't it, but that's okay.
yeah. I mean, they've had so many good songs together that I guess they can sacrifice one. It just sucked that it had to end up like that. But yeah, okay, so now we got 2019's Thank You Next. It came out only 6 months after Sweetener. So what do you think about this?
Oh my gosh, this one also went number 1, and I was literally the next thing I was gonna say was this only came out 6 months after Sweetener, so imagine that turnaround. I mean, incredible, incredible turnaround, and I think this is her best album. Um, that's my argument for it. Clocking in at 12 tracks, I think this is her shortest album, but I think it's her most complete from start to finish. I don't think any song is like a stray away or a possible cut or a skip. I think each has a very important position in the album. I wrote that down. I wrote position and I put asterisks around it. So I said it. So there's the joke. Um, she got her first her singles debuted at number 1, which is the first time that that happened. 2 of them. 2 of
And
them.
now she's on
7
a roll.
Rings. I
She's got
know,
6
7
now.
Rings and Thank You Next both
Yeah,
were debuted at number 1, and I believe someone can double check this, but I believe she held the top 3 positions on the Billboard Hot
she did.
100.
She did
I
on
I'm not sure if she was the first artist to do that or, like, the first female or,
Beatles did it.
um, but I know she held all 3 top spots on the
Yep.
Billboard Hot 100, and that is quite impressive. So, this album was commercially very successful and very well received upon release, to say the least. Um, so my notable tracks here, I mean, you could say the whole album is, like, filled with notable tracks, but Bloodline, Bad Idea, Ghostin', In My Head, Seven Rings, Imagine, and Break Up With Your Girlfriend, I'm Bored. All incredible songs. But I don't think there's a questionable or a bad song on this album. I think that's why it's her best. Like I had to really think about if I had to take one song off the album, which one would it be? Like I had to sit down and really go through it. I ultimately made a decision, but like it was very, very difficult to do that. I also like that she used her lower register here a lot more, and I love that. I love her lower register voice. I think it's incredible, and I think it's even better that she included it more because it shows that she has a lot more range in her voice. People know her for her higher register, but that doesn't mean that she can't hit the lower notes just as well because she can, and she showed us she could. Um, in My Head has one of her best bridges, if not her best. I loved. I love that bridge. Yeah, there's nothing more I have to say about that. I think everyone loves that bridge. I mean, In My Head is also probably the best song on the album as well. Just my thought. And Ghostin', I think, is her most emotional and raw and I don't know if I want to maybe mature song, even most mature song. I don't know. I don't know about the mature one. It might be. And I'm really sad that she didn't want it on the album, but it ultimately got pushed onto it anyways by her manager and by her label. But I am really glad that we got to see that side of her, this more
Mm.
emotional and raw side of her because it's something that she doesn't show as often. She's always the upbeat pop girl. She's got some ballads, but this one held a lot of meaning because I think it was about Mac Miller. And like that was a huge, his death was huge on her, especially, being his ex-girlfriend and all. Probably his soulmate. They were probably soulmates. But yeah, I I enjoyed really hearing that more emotional side of her. I think it was a very well done song. I don't really see any negatives here for this album. I think the only weak song, quote unquote weak, is Makeup. If I had to remove one, I'd remove that one. It's also the shortest song on the album. Um, that's my removal. It's not even a bad song. It's just probably the weakest. And it's not my favorite. It's my second favorite. So I don't even know if it's a negative. It's not my favorite, but I love this album so much, and I've loved it since first listen.
Yeah, I've loved it since first listen too. I think that Thank You Next is her most concise album. So coming in at only 12 songs, there's not really much filler here at all, if any, like you were saying. The only song I agree with you, Makeup, that song is kind of meh, but every other song on here I would not cut. Like I literally wouldn't. And that's something that can't be said about Ariana Grande's other albums because I wouldn't argue for cutting some songs. But here I wouldn't, because every single song definitely plays a part within what she's trying to say in some way, shape, or form. And I already said this. Ariana does best when she has something to say, when she goes through life changes, and that happened exactly between the 6 months of Sweetener and Thank You Next, Mac Miller. So that added on to everything that happened before. And I really just admire her for coming back to the scene 6 months afterwards and coming out with this album. She could have easily took a long break, but like no, she went back in the studio and made this. So I'm glad this became big for her. It got 2 number 1s and the critical recognition it deserved. If I had to spotlight some songs on here, let's see. I like Needy personally. I think that's a really good one. Let's see. NASA. I know I see a lot of fans hating on NASA here, and it's like I don't know why. I really love this song. I feel like maybe it's just like not their style for some reason, but I think it's so catchy. I don't know. I love singing NASA like in the car a lot. Then Fake Smile. I really, really love this song. Fake Smile, I think, is my favorite on here just because I feel like it's relatable to me and I think it's relatable to a lot of other people too. And I believe her on this song. Like this is a subject matter that I can believe Ariana Grande on. She's a massive celebrity. She's a musician that's, in the public eye while going through all of what she's been through. So this song is definitely very true to the message that she's trying to portray here, which I think is great. Bad Idea. Oh, the bass line on this song is so, so good. This has to be a highlight for like one of her best productions, And the outro is really, really good. I like how it kind of like serves as a halfway point in the album, Ghosting. So this song, you were saying like Ariana didn't want it on there. I didn't know that, but I feel like this song is completely necessary to the album. Like Thank You Next without Ghosting, like I don't know. Ghostin' just seems like, it's the ballad, it fills that role, but it fills it in such a way that's so true to herself, that shows a new side to her. And, obviously it's gotten a great reception. It's a fan favorite, deep cut, In My Head, great subject matter, great vocals in it. And I do agree with people that think it's one of her strongest songs. And then, the singles aren't all bad. I don't think they're as strong as Sweetener singles, but the album closes out with, the three-peat of Seven Rings, Thank You Next, Break Up With Your Girlfriend, which is good. I think I said this in the Kanye West episode, but like usually the last three songs, there's always at least one filler in there. So that was not the case with this one, which is good. I think this album is definitely a mainstream pop album with like trap influences, but I think it's done right. So yeah, I'm a fan of Thinking X.
I no, I completely agree, and I also think that because I really like how you said that she does so well when she has something to say, which is
Mhm.
so true. When she has something she wants to say, she does an incredible job of
Yeah,
saying it, and I think that's why her later albums did so well is because, yeah, she did go through and it's a terrible thing, like, all the things she's gone through, right? With Manchester, with Mac dying, with her
Pete Davidson.
engagement, and
Yeah,
then the following breakup with Pete Davidson, and all of that happening in such a short period of time, it probably took an emotional toll on her,
it
but then
did.
she turned it into these masterpieces, these beautiful pieces of art,
Mhm.
and that is something that we need to applaud her for. So I loved how you really said that she when she has something to say, she can say it. 'Cause I completely agree with that. Yeah, this is just an incredible album. So I have nothing more other I have nothing but good things to say about it.
I have nothing more to say also about Thinking X. But as we move on to her most recent effort, 2020's Position, she didn't wait too long to release it, only about a year and a half. So what do you think of this one?
Um, so this one also went number one, and it's her most forward album, to put it kindly. And it was, I guess, it came.
Just put it bluntly.
um, it was somewhat of a surprise. Like she told us we were getting an album that month, I think, and then she
Yeah.
gave it to us. So it was like a kind of a surprise. Um, she wrote a whole album about how happy Dalton makes her in all sorts of ways.
Mhm.
It's great. It's kind of like how Dangerous Woman, she like shed a layer. She's like, I'm not a Nickelodeon star. And then well, this time she shed another layer. She's like, I'm look, I'm gonna write a whole album about love and sexy times.
Oh my god.
I'm trying to like be appropriate about this.
Yeah.
But so props to her for shedding yet another layer of herself. I love it. I love when I listened to it, I was like, wow, she's really going for it. So um I think Positions the single, the song itself, deserves a lot more love. I know it's not a huge fan favorite just looking at where people position it in, how they rank the songs. I don't think people tend to like it all too much. It's usually in the bottom half of people's lists. I really like it. And if you watch the studio sessions, you can see the amount of work she put in to create the song. I'm telling you, if you just watch it, I don't know how she can do it. She does it effortlessly, just adding notes effortlessly, and it somehow just sounds that incredible. I mean, I've watched it like 5 times, and it's still f I unfathomable how she can do that. So if you have not seen the studio sessions for that song, please watch them because they are incredible. You can see the process behind her making the songs, and it's great. Um, we haven't discussed features a whole lot in this episode, but I think the features all in this album are all wonderful. I think they all did a very good job. Was it Doja Cat, Ty Dolla Sign, and The Weeknd? I think there were only three.
Yeah.
So, and then of course we got the remix, the 3435 remix with Doja and Megan, but that was on the deluxe. So again, I think all of them did a wonderful job. I think they all fit into the album very well. Off the Table is not my favorite Ariana Weekend collab, um, but I think The Weeknd did his thing. He always does his thing. Notable tracks: Motive, Just Like Magic, Safety Net, Love Language, Positions, POV, and Nasty. Those are my notable tracks. I don't think I like the same songs that most Arianators like. I don't know. Um, but some other notes: the whistle notes in My Hair are just wow.
Uh,
You just when you think you know what Ariana's abilities are, she comes in and throws a curveball. She's like, "Oh, by the way, I can do this too." She's always got a trick up her sleeve. I swear, the woman can do anything. And I actually really like the outros on this album. I think they're actually really I don't know, I there's something about them that I love, especially in Positions and Love Language and Safety Net. I think the outros are very nicely done. The Positions outro is one of my absolute favorites. I will skip the whole song just to listen to that last part because of how good it sounds. It's like, oh, beautiful. And I think the deluxe tracks are so good that they should have been included on the original album. I think the deluxe tracks are better than like 30% of the original album, and they should have been switched out. So, some negatives, similarly to Sweetener, at least for me, it took me a while to genuinely enjoy this album. I didn't like it when I first listened to it at all. And then I listened to it a couple more times and I'm like, okay, I'm starting to like it a little bit more. Okay, I get it. But I think it's one of her less accessible albums. Not that its sound is way too different from what she's released, it's just I don't know, there's something about it. It is a different sound, but I don't know, there's something about it that
Yeah.
I don't think people would enjoy upon first listen. I think it takes some time. It starts off terribly. Like the beginning, the first song is terrible. Shut Up is terrible. When I listened to it, I was like, "Oh my god, this is gonna be a garbage album." Then I listened to the rest of the album and I was like, "Oh, never mind." But what like why do you start with that? It's so no, And I'm gonna hate saying this. I wrote that down. I was like, I'm gonna hate saying this, but some of the tracks are just boring, like straight up boring. Like notably West Side 630. They're so forgettable, so boring. I don't even know what they sound like. And I've listened to the album fully like 5 times, and I still don't know what they sound like. Because that's just how forgettable they are. They're just I bore myself listening to them. And I think she should have taken them out and put in the deluxe ones. And I wrote down especially Worst Behavior and Test Drive because I think they would stand out in the album. They got a little bit of a different sound. But that's my take. I like it. It's just eh.
I think you summed it up right there. Yeah. That would be the word I would describe to use this album, or simply just a letdown. Because coming after her last 3 albums, which I, had in my rotation for so long, Dangerous Woman, Sweetener, Thinking X, like that's a pretty good three-peat. And I was like, okay, she's heating up here. She has some really good albums. I was waiting for this to be like her magnum opus, if you will, and her like big breakthrough to R&B. Like she was saying she was going to do R&B, but I really don't think that this is the like R&B I was expecting. It's still very much like watered down and pop oriented. It kind of just seems like half baked. That would be another word I would use to describe this album. Half baked. It feels like this album was made in like 2 weeks. I know people say that for Thinking X, but it feels like for Positions this album was made so quick because the production on here is just very much the same. And it's like you said, they lose identity a little bit. It's not necessarily in a particularly good way with this album. Maybe, I still need to wait for my time to like love this album, but it hasn't came yet. I know Sweetener, first listen, I wasn't crazy, but it grew on me pretty quick. This one is kind of a little bit different than that. I don't see this one growing on me anytime soon. Maybe I'll need to check it out more. But with that being said, I think this album isn't all too bad. I think it's okay. There are some good songs. So just like Magic, I like this song for some reason. I think it's catchy. I think, it gets me in the mood. I'm like, okay, like I get everything I want, like all of that. It's kind of like a bad bitch anthem.
I
Um,
I like the part where she's like middle finger to my thumb and then I snap it.
I always
Yep.
snap when she does that.
Yeah.
That one's fun. Safety Net. This one's probably my favorite song on the album. It's so good. Since the first listen, it's been #1 on my rankings. Ty Dolla Sign did really good. I was skeptical like how Ty Dolla Sign would do here because he's been on like a lot of features with some other artists I enjoy, and he's kind of ruined the songs. Like I know Christina Aguilera's "Accelerate" he was on, and like I hated that song when he came in. But this song he did really really good on. It's like good job Ty Dolla Sign. My Hair, we talked about, really, really good one. The best part on the album is easily when she does, easily when she goes into her whistle register towards the end. Like that was the best part in my opinion. And My Hair is just like, I feel like this was a sound that I was expecting a little bit when she said like R&B, but the other songs we didn't really get that in. You were saying that like West Side and 6:30 you didn't enjoy. I didn't enjoy 6:30 at all. I thought that was bad. But I don't know. Everyone like hates West Side. I'm not like too critical of it. I think it's okay. Like I thought it's short, but I thought it was like catchy. I don't know. I thought the melody was okay on this one. I guess we just have different opinions. In Obvious, I actually think Obvious is like pretty catchy. But yeah, and then POV, like everyone likes that one. I don't like it as much as everyone does, but I still really think it's good. I don't think it's her best ballad though, but I think it's still really good. So yeah, that's what I would have to say about that one. What else do I want to say here? So I've said throughout this episode that Ariana does best when she goes through life changes and writes about something that's happened and she's inspired. This album's not inspired at all, and I think that's where it went wrong. Maybe it's not. I wouldn't say it's her fault because it was only a year and a half after Thank You Next came out, so she didn't have a lot of time to experience stuff and write about new things. So have like sex and stuff like that's not a bad subject matter, but like when the lyricism's not, those are some of her weaker lyrics. I can't really defend it in that sense. Whereas, coming off of Thank You Next, which had particularly good songwriting, this was definitely a step down in that aspect. So my hope for Ariana Grande is that she takes a break. She needs to take a break at least 2 years, like at least maybe even 3 years, and then come back with a new sound. If she wants to do R&B, that's fine, but I think she should go deeper into the sound. Or if she wants to do like dance pop, do that, but go deep into the sound. Don't have like this half-baked stuff going on, and then have something to write about. I know she's got married. Maybe she can like write about some new inspirations with that. Just get some like new creative juices or something, and work with a new producer. Maybe that will be good for her. Maybe like that'll bring a new side out of her. But that's my hopes for her future, judging based off of this album. I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's good. That's just always my thoughts on it. And also the deluxe tracks. I do think the deluxe tracks are good though. I think that brings up the album. But Worst Behavior is like really catchy, so that's my favorite one. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Positions. And yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you make really good points. I think that because Thank You Next was so good,
Hmm.
that's why this felt like such a letdown. I think
Yeah.
if Thank You Next wasn't as good as it was, this
Mhm.
probably would actually look a lot better. Because I know that she wasn't inspired in like really dramatic ways, but she did find the love of her life in this
Yeah,
time period,
I
right? And she was dating him for like 6 months or 8 months or something. I don't remember the time frame. But like she found the love of her life. She just married the guy. So I guess he was her inspiration and like his love was her inspiration for this album. But again, I think it just wasn't as well done, and I think because of our expectations, we were a lot more let down than we would have been.
Well, I think it's not only Thank You Next, but also Dangerous Woman and Sweetener were good. So that's 3 albums in a row that she's got good there. And I was like really, looking forward to having an album that's like, the step up. Cause I'm like, if she's I feel like each one was kind of better than the other. So I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be her magnum opus. Like totally, I'm going to fall in love with her. I'm going to be an Arianator. But it just wasn't the case for me. So that could be why I was a little bit disappointed. But I don't think this is that bad. I don't think it's her worst album. But speaking of which, we're going to go into our final rankings for the albums now, worst to best. So you go first, Venetia.
So for me personally, I think last place is going to yours truly. That doesn't make it a bad album. I love every Ariana Grande album. I feel like I should preface this. I love every Ariana Grande album. With that, yours truly. Number 5 is My Everything. 4 is Positions. 3 is Sweetener. 2 is Thank You Next. And number 1 is Dangerous Woman.
Okay, so I have two rankings here, just with one minor change. So best to worst, really quick, is 6, My Everything, 5 years truly, 4 Positions, 3, Dangerous Woman, 2 Sweetener, and then 1 Thank You Next. And then Dangerous Woman is my personal favorite. the order would be the same for personal favorites, just Dangerous Woman number one, just because I like that album. Just for some reason, I think it may be like maybe nostalgia a little bit or the pop sound, but just for some reason, I don't have a good reason for why it is. I just think most of my favorite songs are on there, but as a body of work, I don't think it's her best. So yeah, just
No,
that's
I agree with your, like, best to
mhm,
worst. I said, like, my I said what I like listening to, but
yeah.
I agree best
Uh-huh.
to worst, that's pretty much
Yeah,
how I would put
just
it
well,
too.
I said that because my order's literally the same. It's just one little change. So yeah.
Mm, yeah.
But basically, that's all we have for this
Yeah. That's all we have for today. Thank you guys for joining in. We had a lot of fun with this one, especially me because I'm a big fan of hers. But I'm not an Arianator.
I did.
I don't claim to be one. But I love her music. So we had a lot of fun with this. And next episode, not week, next episode, we are going to be talking about our favorite music videos of all time, which is an interesting topic choice of ours, but we're really excited to delve into that a little bit more because I think music videos play a large role in us enjoying the music and an artist showing off their artistry. So we can't wait to talk about that more with you guys. So until next time, it's goodbye from Venetia and from
Dylan.
thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you guys.
Bye.